I got a question for Stacy.
Oh man.
Well, just kind of a neat thing that happened this morning. So we're at Panera Bread, we're running into each other, and I was like, oh yeah, we're recording this podcast. We're going to talk about Psalm 42-43, depression. And, you were so willing to say to me like, hey, yeah, like I've lived with that.
Yeah.
But you told me something about how you guys actually delayed going on the international mission field until God worked through different things in your life, your home, your marriage, your ministry, to prepare you. Like you didn't just rush in at a time when it wasn't right by God's grace.
Yeah.
Can you tell a little bit of the story? Like let's ground some of this talk about counseling depression, praying the Psalms in a life story a little bit.
Yeah. So when we, I think our kids were very young, I began to kind of battle through some like postpartum depression, and had kind of like seasons in life, right, where things were really hard, family relationships or different things, where I had noticed that tendency about myself that it got really, really dark and really, really like broken sadness inside of me. And I think our son, who's now 14, was 2 years old. We were considering going to the mission field to Argentina with an organization that we really loved and believed in. And I was in therapy at that time between my husband and I, with 2 small kids, and I was struggling with depression, and life was like, it was difficult, and our marriage was in kind of like just a hard spot. Like I look back and that was like a season where things were just really, it was always hard. It was always difficult. And, I look back at that now very understanding, right? Rear view, like, oh gosh, God was totally a part of this. And God closed those doors and kind of led us in a different direction that kept us here in Bucks County. Because it wasn't the right time, and I was not in the right place. And I even remember, and it was going to mean moving over to Argentina was going to mean sacrificing all of our community and friends. And at that point in my life, that was like one of the only things that I was clinging to get through kind of my depression. And so I remember feeling this immense amount of guilt and shame that the reason we couldn't go live overseas was because I was broken, right? That I was unfixable, and it was and my husband was very gracious and like, that's not it. It's not right for our family. It's not the time. Like he has a different thing for us. But I carried that burden of like, oh, I've just changed the trajectory of our entire lives and our future. And we don't get to do this thing that you feel passionate about because I'm broken. And so over the, next 10 years, continued to do therapy, continued to seasons where I had to take medication because it got really bad. And then seasons where I wasn't in therapy, but I was implementing other self-care practices, like being very proactive about exercise and being very proactive about meeting my prayer partner every single week. Got me to a place where, there probably is still those genetics in my family and in me that would lean towards depression, because we have people in my family who have bipolar, people who struggle with depression, a plethora of things. Yes, that is still a part of me and where I am, but I am in a much healthier, better place because I took the 10 years to work and live and raise my children, but to do the things that I need to do to understand myself, to understand my husband, to understand my children, to grow my faith in my community. But yeah, therapy was a huge part of that. My accountability partner was a huge part of that. And then got to a season where like the mission field thing came up again. And I was like, okay, are we ready for this? Like, can we do this? And it was right. The things fell into place as they should. And I knew that not perfect by no means, like don't for one second think I'm like, oh, I had it all together, so I went to the mission field. Not at all. It was just that it was the right season and time and place that God wanted us to be, because I had taken the time to work through those things. Does that answer the question?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
So, and Stacy, it makes me think, who's really going to benefit from that generationally? Because if you don't mind me just, you said generationally, you've had some trauma in your family with your grandfather being killed on a mission field, right? That's anxiety provoking for anybody who's going to go on the mission field from your family. Is like, that happened, So there's, some of that stuff, but I'm thinking, who's going to benefit is your children, because when you think about the genetic passing down genetically of anxiety, what they kind of, this is layman's terms and don't quote me, read Kurt Thompson's Anatomy of the Soul. He says it so much better, but, he says that, if you have generationally, like great grandparents, your parents, now you, with anxiety, that it's almost like a switch has been flipped up, and because that anxiety has gone on unaddressed. Like in my family, my grandfather was in the war. He has had major PTSD. That PTSD got passed down to now, I'm talking to my aunts and uncles. I'm hearing, genetically, there was some anxiety and trauma that got passed down. Did it get passed down to me? Yeah, I totally think there's a part of my anxiety that comes from that switch being flipped up. And the work I know I've done in my life, the work you've done in your life, is going to benefit my children as I name those things now, as I name those emotions that come up, even name them to my children. I mean, I've had times where I've confessed to my children, when you were little, I was anxious and I know it had an impact on you. Let's talk it through. Let me name it for you and tell you what that was about and tell you how God's restored me so that you can have that security and secure base. I think that is a beautiful outcome.
The therapy also breaks the cycle, right, of that trauma or that thing. So it can be, genetic or, it goes down generations. But for me, like, I remember for the first 2 years saying to my therapist, like, I'm here for my kids. Like, I'm literally here for my children because I could see parts of me that were angry or sad or confused or like the stuff I was struggling with coming out at my children. Like, right? Like my impatience or those things. So I was like, I'm in therapy for my daughter. I'm in therapy for my son, for my other daughter, like, because I want them to see a person who's willing to grow and change and be a better version of themselves. And like probably 10 years ago, if I had done something to hurt my child, I would just like, let it, like, whatever, forget it. But to grow and go, I'm going to apologize to my child and like look at them and say, I'm so sorry I screwed up. I shouldn't have done that. Like those little kind of behavioral things that you do change how your child sees emotions and those kind of things. So it's definitely, absolutely is generational, and we can change that for our kids.
Can we talk about this for a second?
Oh, sorry.
Well, I was going to bring up the topic. There's a physiology. Sometimes depression is passed down, anxiety is passed down, and Christians, there's two extremes, right? There's over medicalizing, under spiritualizing everything. Hey, we're not going to talk about spiritual problems. You might not need talk therapy or to become a more emotionally healthy person by being a Christian and having these practices in your life. It's just a pill you need to take that'll change some chemicals in your brain, and that's all it is, minimizing everything else. Then the other extreme, there would be some Christians who would just say, hey, if you pray and you do these things, you don't need the medicine. And I think it would be helpful to give some folks some wise advice about when medicine is needed. There's a lot of depression and anxiety in my family. I've done talk therapy, and that's been really helpful. There was a period of 2 years too where I was on a medicine, and it helped a little bit, and it would be good to, could we give wise advice about how to think about that and when folks should also talk to their doctor? One
thing that I would say from my personal experience, I had relationships in my life where they were like, if you had the right faith, or if you just have enough faith, you'd throw the pill bottle out the window.
Oh, wow.
And said that to me on a few different occasions. And that was actually, I would interpret that as a form of spiritual abuse. Like it was very traumatic, because what it said to me was, if you were just a better Christian and you just had more faith, like, can you imagine saying that to someone whose kid has cancer, or someone who is going through I can't fathom using those words of, if you just had faith, you'd throw the pill bottle out the window. It was very traumatic for me. And there were seasons where I needed medication, and there were seasons where I went, okay, I'm in a better place. I know that I have all these other things in line. Medication can go off the table right now. And my sister is a psychologist, actually, and she has always told me before, she's like, Stacy, therapy is 80% of the battle. Medication's probably 20, and that varies for person. Putting both together sometimes is the perfect combination, the perfect thing to get you through that season. And then sometimes you need less of one or more of the other. But like, to act like as humans we aren't mind, heart, soul, body. Like it's all connected.
Right.
So
it's holistic.
To ignore one piece of that and think it's just spiritual and forget the physical, or it's just physical and forget the spiritual, I think is detrimental.
There'll be people listening to this. Some people like just want to take a pill and maybe not do talk therapy because that's scarier.
Mm-hmm.
And some people could probably be wisely helped by, hey, open up, have some friends where you walk with what you're going through, talk to a therapist. If your depression is at that level, there's other people who just rather do counseling and because of some of those experiences, or just it freaks them out, are opposed to medicine. There is something to name here too. And we have pharma people in the area, but pharmaceutical companies make a lot of money and kind of want everyone to be on medicine too. That's also a thing that's happening. And it also sometimes really helps people.
Yes.
So there's this is incredibly nuanced conversation.
Absolutely.
Well, I think too, it helps to say a season. Right?
Yes.
It's not like some people, I think, get in their minds, if I start something, it's
forever.
I'm committed.
It's forever.
And there's no end to either the talk therapy or the medication or whatever it is that you're trying to do. When reality is, it's all about how do we approach a season in life that may require some extra help.
And there will be some people who are like, hey, this medicine helps me, and I'm going to be on it for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true. There will be some bipolar brothers and sisters. And that kind of stuff.
And
too.
Medication for them is a non-negotiable. Like it just is what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to nuance any of that? What this conversation, Marsha, about medicine?
I mean, I think just to reiterate, I think there are some anxieties and depressions that are biologically based. I mean, Stacy, you mentioned, when you had postpartum, I had postpartum too. I had postpartum depression and anxiety. Really difficult. And it was biological. It's hormonally based. A lot of women going through menopause will then go through a bout of anxiety and depression. It's biological. Bipolar, it's biological. My bipolar clients, I say, you have to approach your medication. You have to approach your medication the way a diabetic approaches insulin. It is what helps you remain healthy. And there's no shame in taking it, or schizophrenic, or, people with schizophrenia, to be able to rely on medication for proper functioning. And then with people who, let's just say something disrupts their life, so their anxiety or their depression is circumstantial, or it's unaddressed, family of origin issues or things that are coming up again. My whole kind of, way I approach it with clients is I'll say, it's up to you if you want to take medication. I mostly encourage it if you can't function. If you can't relate with your children, if you can't get out of bed, if you can't go to work, if you can't think, you probably need medication, for a season to be able to kind of bring that back online. People with anxiety, what people don't understand about people with anxiety and depression is that when you are anxious, the part of your brain that is on fire does not allow the cognitive side of your brain to actually string words together. So when you are in full-blown anxiety, you can't think, you can't read, you can't process. And it is incredibly hard place to be. So when people say, just read your Bible more, what if you can't? You're having such a hard time. Well, that's maybe a time then to lean into the body of Christ. I've done that with friends. Be like, look, you need to read it to me, or you need to pray with me because I can't right now. But as far as medication, though, to go back to that, if that helps you to be able to settle enough, then to be able to process, that's a good time to take it. And to have it be short term is a great idea, as long as it's not biologically based. So, yeah, one of our dearest friends, I'm sorry, Sue, let me just say, one of our dearest friends has clinical, medically, biological depression. He's an elder in his church. He's a dear, dear man of God. And his father had biological depression and he does. And he suffers. And he does everything he can, to keep his faith, but it's never going to go away. He's going to have this, and we need to support him and love him and not throw guilt on him for something that his body is doing. We need to come alongside and just support,
That's really good. Sometimes people are surprised to hear, like Charles Spurgeon, the suffering he went through, the depression he went through, Martin Luther, William Cowper was kind of like he had a lifelong struggle with depression, wrote a lot of beautiful hymns. And yeah, these are brothers and sisters in Jesus that love Jesus, and also, because of the fall, we have brokenness, and depression and anxiety can be part of our brokenness. Hey, that was great advice about medicine. I want to read a quote from this book. Johann Hari wrote a book called Lost Connections, Uncovering the Real Causes of Depression and the Unexpected Solutions. And it's a satisfying, I think, a fun read for me as a Christian pastor, because he basically says, hey, our modern society, we're disconnected from people. We need to reconnect to people. We're disconnected from meaningful values. The gospel gives us things to live for. Like everything we do out of love for God and others matters forever. They're values.
Yeah.
We're disconnected from a secure future. Hey, in the gospel, we know how the story ends. You brought up the book of Revelation earlier. My favorite line about Revelation, I got it from this professor, Vern Poythress. It's not a puzzle book. It's a picture book. We're supposed to read it. Jesus wins. The Lamb wins. God's going to heal the world. That's what we're supposed to do. We're not supposed to be like, what chart do I make about how can I predict everything? We're supposed to read it. God is going to overcome the brokenness, wipe away the tears. We're meant to live in that hope. And he's saying this as an atheist, and he has righteous frustration with people saying, hey, only you can help yourself. Only you can help yourself. He's like, here's the quote. I kept noticing a self-help cliche that people say to each other all the time, share on Facebook incessantly. We say to each other, no one can help you except you. It made me realize we haven't just started doing things alone more in every decade since the 1930s. We have started to believe that doing things alone is the natural state of human beings and the only way to advance. We have begun to think, I will look after myself and everybody else should look after themselves as individuals. No one can help you but you. No one can help me but me. These ideas now run so deep in our culture that we offer them as feel-good bromides to people who feel down, as if it will lift them up. But John, this is someone he had interviewed, has proven that this is a denial of human history and a denial of human nature. It leads us to misunderstand our most basic instincts, and this approach to life makes us feel terrible. So, in self-sufficient, slick Bucks County, we got to remind people, well, everyone, this is just the world, right? Everyone has a veneer of we want to appear more together than we are, really. Pastors included. The gospel says we need Jesus and we need each other. We need each other, and we need a more deep kind of relational life than normal. This is where I'm going to push the envelope. Go one more.
Oh, yay!
One more step.
My favorite.
We haven't talked about anything significant yet this morning, so
push the envelope.
It's been so fluffy so far.
Let's get to the meat.
Look, you can't live as a normal, quote unquote, normal person, American, and have a healthy relational life. We're called to Jesus to be countercultural in ways that'll make us flourish as human beings, like more real about our emotions. We'll spend more time with people. We'll rearrange life to share life with other human beings. We'll be still more in a culture that's busy. We'll be simple more in a culture that we blow through our money. We don't have much to give or share. would be simpler, slower, more relationship focused. And besides, needing to change everything about the way we live, we don't need to change much. That's my line. The podcast is over.
And that's the conclusion. And goodbye. Change everything.
Change it all.
Oh my gosh.
Well, hey, we talked about a lot. Thank you, team. Thank you to all our special guests. Thank you, Marsha. Thank you, Stacy, for jumping in. It was really rich having you share your story, your life experience, and your journey with depression. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thanks for having me.
Everything. So thanks, everyone. Till next time, the Covenant Podcast. Take care. Good job, everybody. He's going to get a picture.
Oh my gosh, my ears are so sweaty. Oh my gosh.
You want them on? And do you want us looking at you?